Yes, the Kings had just lost back-to-back games at home to the Indiana Pacers and Phoenix Suns. But before that, they put up 140 points on the Charlotte Hornets. And after a relatively good start to the season, despite a very difficult schedule, all of us in Sacramento looked at a 4-game road trip consisting of games against the San Antonio Spurs, Oklahoma City Thunder, Detroit Pistons, and Minnesota Timberwolves as a prime opportunity for this team to really get right and show that they are maybe a tier above some of those play-in or worse teams in the NBA. Instead, the Kings go 1-3 on that road trip against 4 teams with a combined 18-37 record. The Kings end their road trip in Minnesota, losing to a Timberwolves team that had lost 8 of their last 9 games. Oh boy, this one was a tough one to watch. We're going to break it down as much as possible, but really, I'm going to get out of the way for a good chunk of this podcast because Tristan Thompson had a phenomenal press conference after the Kings loss where he spoke from the heart and he gave some tough love to this Kings team, also some things to really rally this team, some things for fans to rally behind. Everything that Tristan Thompson said, you absolutely have to hear. So I'm going to be playing that full press conference for you to watch or listen to on today's Locked On Kings podcast.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season and all off season. If you're looking for in-depth analysis, game-by-game breakdowns, highlights, interviews with local and national experts, full coverage of your Sacramento Kings from January through to December, this is the place for you, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I've been a Sacramento sports media member for the last 7 years. This is my 8th season covering the Kings, formerly with Sports 1140 KHTK Radio in Sacramento, now with ABC 10 Television. And I wish I could say that I was surprised by how the Kings handled this 4-game road trip. But in reality, there is a part of every single Kings fan that knows when the Kings have a stretch of winnable games against opponents that they're either on even par to or that are supposedly, at least on paper, worse than the Kings. Oftentimes, the Kings are bound to drop a number of the games, if not the majority of those games, just based off of their history and how this team plays, playing to the level of their competition. We've talked about it 1,000 times, it seems, in the time that I've hosted the Locked On Kings podcast. We've seen it game after game after game after game, season after season after season during this 15-plus season playoff drought since 2006. So I don't need to go into more detail about it today. I've talked about it recently. I've ranted on it. It's just saying the same thing over and over again. In reality, this road trip was the same thing over and over again. But at the same time, too, with the expectations on this Kings team, the expectations put on this team by Luke Walton, by Monty McNair, by the players, that this is a playoff team or bust, that this is a playoff or bust season, that people are probably losing their jobs if the Kings don't make the playoffs this season, based off of the moves that this Kings team made. Another successful draft pick, at least so far, in Davion Mitchell at 9. Some solid signings during the offseason that we thought were better than maybe they actually were. All that considered, we expected this Kings team to be better. We expected this Kings team to recognize the pattern over the last 15 years and be able to fix it. And in the end, this team doesn't look like they've gone anywhere. Even if the personnel has changed, even if the head coach were to change, even if the general manager were to change, ownership were to change, the same damn problems happen every single season. We get from this good start where the Kings go 5-4 through their first 9 games, have one of the toughest schedules of the season to start. Then things start to slow down a little bit. They hit some bumps, a poor shooting performance against the Pacers, but had a chance to win that game. A very poor third quarter against the Phoenix Suns, but still they had a chance to win that game. The theme through those first 11 games or so of the season is that even when the Kings weren't playing well, they were still in it and had a chance to win. Now, they weren't winning as much as maybe they could have, which was frustrating at that time. But boy, what would I give to go back 2 weeks and handle that frustration compared to this frustration? Because that frustration was at least new. It's like the Kings are still making mistakes, but they're growing pains, and they're still in these games. They still have a chance to win. They're not winning maybe because De'Aaron isn't playing well enough. That was concerning at the time, right? And it still is concerning now. But now you've gone from that to the Kings have reverted back to putting themselves in positions where they're losing games that they absolutely should win against opponents that they should be better than. And, you know, I said in a recent podcast, shame on me for thinking at any point during this 4-game road trip that the Kings should win games, because they haven't earned that right over the last 15 years. They truly haven't. But at the same time, too, when the expectations are put on the team like making the playoffs, you have to win games like on this 4-game road trip. San Antonio, a worse team than you. Oklahoma City, a worse team than you that is openly trying to tank. You have the Detroit Pistons, one of the worst teams in the NBA. They're trying to add another top 5 or top 3 pick to Cade Cunningham and Killian Hayes and that core that they have down there. And then you have the Minnesota Timberwolves, which out of the 4 games, I was like, okay, this is probably the toughest out of the 4. I said I think the Kings need to go 3-1 minimum during this 4-game road trip, with the one loss being that Minnesota Timberwolves game, because even if the Kings had a better record than the Timberwolves, and even with the Timberwolves struggling so far this season, the Kings and Timberwolves are at least in a similar tier of teams that are on the rise in the West, that are trying to insert themselves in the play-in at the very least by the end of this season. The other 3 teams, they're on a tier below. We're talking about the cellar of both the Western and the Eastern Conference. And yet, the Kings go 1-3. Like I said during the intro, the Kings go 1-3 against 4 teams during this road trip with a combined 18-37 record. 18-37. Now, the Kings don't have a winning record themselves, so it's not the biggest deal in the world, or maybe that's not as significant as a team like the Lakers or another team that's above 500 or 500 above losing against combined teams with that terrible of a record. But it speaks to the pattern of this Kings team. It speaks to the culture of this Kings team and the identity of this Kings team for nearly 2 decades. 1-3 against teams with a combined record of 18-37. We were hoping this team was going to go 3-1 or maybe 4-0 during this road trip. Instead, they go home, and now they start a very, very difficult stretch coming up that we, of course, will discuss. But getting into this game, man, I mean, just a disastrous road trip. The Kings could not take care of the basketball in this game. I don't know what the deal was. And we've heard Luke Walton talk a lot about live ball turnovers. Live ball turnovers have been a big issue for this Kings team so far this season, where you turn the ball over, the ball is still live, so teams can get back in transition, typically score an easy bucket, versus a dead ball turnover is like you throw the ball out of bounds, right? Or a shot clock violation where the ball is stopped and you can at least get back on defense. Live ball turnovers are a lot worse than those kind of turnovers. But any turnover, of course, is a bad thing. But you look at this game for the Sacramento Kings, how they were turning over the ball, how 13 turnovers in the first quarter came from their starters. Like, that absolutely cannot happen. And what's frustrating is this team makes different mistakes in different games. Some nights, some mistakes are cleaner than others. A good example is in tonight's game. The Kings have been getting crushed on the glass, especially offensive rebounds. They've been getting killed for the majority of the season, offensive rebounds. In this game, they had 20 offensive rebounds, good for 24 second chance points. That's the only reason why the Kings were really in this game when it was all said and done. So they fixed that issue, but then go back to turning the ball over, which they were struggling with early on in the season, but never did they turn over the ball as bad as they did tonight. 20 turnovers in this game, to which the Timberwolves scored 24 points off those 20 turnovers. You know, I joked at halftime that both teams could claim that they're allowing the other to stay in the game. The Kings could claim that their turnovers are what kept the Timberwolves in the game, as both teams were really struggling to score in the first half. The Timberwolves could claim that the offensive rebounds and second chance points that they were giving up is what kept the Kings in this game. And in the end, halftime adjustments were made, but not by the Sacramento Kings. The Timberwolves, after scoring 44 points in the first half, scored 63 points in the second half. The Kings, meanwhile, go from scoring 48 points in the first half to 49 points. Consistent, but consistently bad throughout. And here's another kind of minor example, or just another statistical example of the Kings playing to the level of their competition. Coming into this game, the Kings had an offensive rating of 8. They were 8th in the league in offensive rating. And even though I felt that the offense, which is supposed to be the primary strength of this Kings team, hasn't been great for the majority of the season, still, the numbers suggest that they're in the upper echelon, the upper half of the league, and that's just because of the talent that they have. They're taking on a Minnesota Timberwolves team who comes into this game losing 8 out of 9, who has the 5th worst offensive rating. So statistically, numbers-wise, you read those two and you think, okay, one team should be able to score the ball really well, and the other team will struggle to score. Well, the Minnesota Timberwolves, they were true to their stats. They struggled to score. But so did the Kings. So who came down to whose level? The Kings offense came down from 8th best offensive rating to even with the 5th worst offensive rating in this game. Now that's a one-game example, but like I said, it's just another of many examples, the continuation of the pattern of the Kings playing to the level of their competition. You know, that's a statistical example. And stats are very important. Of course, we judge games based off of stats. We look at box scores to fill in the gaps or to give us an idea of how well a player is doing or how well the team is doing. Statistics are extremely important, but the eye test is very important as well. Very rarely does the eye test let you down. And for me, the eye test has shown that since that Charlotte game that the Kings put up 140 points, and really they didn't do too much different in that game. Shots were just falling. But since that game, since the early part of the season, the Kings have not passed the eye test at all. They may have won games since then. One game. They beat the Detroit Pistons. But they have not looked good, period, compared to how they look at the start of the season. I don't even care that they lost to the Utah Jazz. The Kings' best performance so far this season, other than the 140 points against Charlotte, but I still think the Kings played overall better in their loss to the Utah Jazz at home, their home opener. That was the best that this Kings team has played this season. It was the second game of the season. We have not seen the team look remotely close to that at any point for the remainder of this season. At least my opinion. You could say the Charlotte game, and I'd listen to that argument. But to me, watching how the Kings played as an overall basketball team, how they're executing on both ends of the floor against a championship-level team in the Utah Jazz, how they were playing in that game, eye test-wise and statistically, the best way that they've played. They haven't looked anything like that in the past couple of weeks. It's been like 12 or 13 days of this Kings team looking just bad. They just look bad on both ends of the floor. Even if the stats say offensively they're in the top half of the league, they look bad. And then defensively, they had more letdowns. The fourth quarter in this game defensively was a letdown as Anthony Edwards scored, I think, 13 points in the fourth quarter. Karl Anthony Towns starts the second half with a 7-0 run by himself. Just bad. I said that I'm going to share with you the full Tristan Thompson press conference, and I'm going to do that at the end of the podcast, but minus one question, and it's my question. I asked Tristan Thompson about the leadership on this team. It's something that we talked about a lot here on the Locked On Kings podcast. Where is that vocal leadership coming from? Who should it come from? A lot of Kings fans seem to think that that leadership needs to come from Luke Walton as the head coach, that he needs to inspire this team. He needs to fire them up when they're reeling or on the wrong end of a run. They're falling apart and they need a fire lit under their asses. It needs to be Luke Walton who's that guy. Or maybe it needs to be De'Aaron Fox who's that guy. So I asked Tristan Thompson, like, where is that leadership coming from? Is it coming from you? Is it coming from Walton? And he gave me just an incredible answer. Hey, Tristan, when things start to unravel in games and opponents start going on runs like that 7-0 Karl Anthony Towns run at the start of the third quarter, you've been a vocal leader on this team. Is that on Coach Walton and the coaching staff to kind of inspire some change there? Does this team need more vocal leadership from players? Are you yourself trying to speak up from the bench in a timeout or even on the floor? Like, where's the vocal leadership with this team during those moments?
I'm going to say this. I think no man in this world should rely on another man to inspire them. Point blank player. You could put that in all capitals. Me personally, no one should ever need a coach to inspire you. If you don't get inspired in the game, then you shouldn't be on the court. Losing teams, losing players, you need to get inspiration from your coach. And I'm not with that shit. My teammates better not be. My teammates aren't with it because I know guys want to win and they want to win badly. So it's not about Coach Wallen inspiring you. This is not no freaking glory road shit. No, you got to be ready to play. Your number's called, you in the damn game. I don't need no fucking coach to inspire me. Never have, never will. The day I need a coach to inspire me is the day I'm fucking retired. I'm going to go play with my kids in the park. So I speak for my teammates with that quote. So we don't need no coach to inspire us. I know Towns is a good player, but, we had a game plan for him. And, yes, you want to force him left, but if he gets right, your teammates got to have your back. You got to help your team. It's the same way where if I get beat and I want my teammate to be there, I got to be there for him. That's part of being on a string, and that's how you build a defensive mentality. And the league is fucking hard. It's hard to win. We don't have the luxury of having, that go-to guy like a LeBron, a Kawhi, or a PG, or a Jason Tatum, or Luka. We got to win collectively. So those little things, like with Towns or even with Anthony Edwards, we got to shrink and show bodies and make them second guess the move they're about to make.
That's just a taste of what you're going to hear from Tristan Thompson in this press conference coming up in a little bit. But before we get to that, though, we do have to talk about De'Aaron Fox looking better in this game. But once again, Fox's good game comes in a loss. We have to talk about Marvin Bagley playing for the second straight game and overall just looking meh. We have to talk about Alex Len, who hasn't played in like 3 or 4 straight games, something like that, and I don't know why. And we'll talk about this upcoming stretch which honestly, way more difficult than this 4-game road trip that the Kings were on, but I have more confidence in the Kings during this upcoming stretch, and that's just the wounded basketball fan who's watched the Kings play for the last 15 years. We'll dive into that, and of course, you will hear from Tristan Thompson in just a second. Right now, though, this game made me sore. My shoulders are tense. My neck is tense. Thank goodness I have a Theragun. Don't let the stress of daily life and Kings basketball weigh on your body. Whether you're an elite athlete or someone like me just trying to make it through the day tension-free, just trying to make it through a Kings game tension-free, Theragun can help. Theragun is the handheld percussive therapy device that releases your deepest muscle tension using a scientifically calibrated combo of depth, speed, and power. And it's as quiet as an electric toothbrush. I've used it while my wife is sleeping right next to me and my baby's sleeping in the other room. The Gen 4 Theragun doesn't just feel good, it gets to the source of pain by releasing tension using Theragun's signature percussive therapy, which goes 60% deeper than vibration alone. Whether you want to treat your muscle tension from working out, an injury, or just the stresses of everyday life, there's no substitute for the Theragun Gen 4. The OLED screen and design make you feel like you're holding something from the future. It looks like this really cool massage gun. Go to their site, check it out. The Theragun app learns from your behaviors. It also suggests guided routines and massages for you and your problem areas. Theragun is trusted by 250 professional sports teams like Real Madrid, elite athletes like Paul George, DeAndre Hopkins, Maria Sharapova, hundreds of thousands of customers, and me. I use it, and I would be just a wreck without this thing. Try Theragun for 30 days starting at $199. Go to therabody.com/lockedon right now and get your Gen 4 Theragun today. That's therabody.com/lockedon. therabody.com/lockedon. I feel kind of bad for De'Aaron Fox in this game. Fox is one of the many players who likes to aggressively attack the basket and earn their way to the free throw line. And with the change of the foul rules, which I overall think is a fantastic change and has made the game so much better this season, Fox seems to be one of the biggest victims of that. And Fox was getting just beat up in this game around the rim. He was even getting beat up defensively towards the end of this game. The game was already over, but Fox was trying to trap Karl Anthony Towns in the corner after crossing half court. And Towns just threw him to the ground. Like, poor De'Aaron was just thrown all over the place in this game. Overall, it was a good game for De'Aaron. He played well offensively. He didn't do a good job taking care of the basketball. Had 3 turnovers. All 3 of those turnovers came in the first half, but he did finish with 28 points. The next highest score on the Kings was Buddy Hield with 16 off the bench. But Fox looked like that leader, that takeover guy. And in the fourth quarter, he scored on 2 or 3 straight possessions to try and give the Kings a chance to win this game late. But the Kings defense really couldn't hold on. Went 10 of 20 from the field, 2 of 5 from 3-point range, 6 of 8 from the free throw line. Did have 5 assists. Compare that to the game that Tyrese Halliburton had. Halliburton and Fox played very, very well against the Detroit Pistons a couple nights ago. In this game, Halliburton just 7 points, 3 assists, 5 rebounds, but 4 turnovers in this game. So not enough out of Tyrese there. Rashawn Holmes had 12 points and 7 rebounds, not enough there. Only 4 points from Chimezie Metu. He struggled to get his shot going in his third start, I think. And Harrison Barnes had 13 points. He slowed down a lot since the start of this season. And it's no surprise that as he slowed down, so have the Kings. Only 4 players in double-figure scoring, which we know when the Kings win, it's typically 6+ players in double-figure scoring. That speaks to the offensive struggles of this game. But overall, like fourth quarter, De'Aaron Fox looked like he was back in this game. Fourth quarter, De'Aaron Fox made an appearance. He was attacking. He was getting downhill. He was aggressive. It was a positive sight to see. What's negative is that his 3 past games where he scored like 25 plus points, 2 out of the 3 of them have been losses. And the third one was a game that the Kings barely won, the opener in Portland. Remember how the Kings nearly threw that game away in the fourth quarter? Like they threw this game away in the fourth quarter. Not as bad though. It was more even than the Portland game was. But if Fox is going to be, if the pattern is the Kings are losing when Fox has those good offensive games, that, of course, should be concerning to everybody. I'm not putting that on Fox. I'm not putting that on anybody else. That's just something that this Kings team is going to have to work out. But at least if I'm trying to pull positives out of this game, other than the offensive rebounding by the Kings, at least De'Aaron got going in the fourth quarter and did all he could to give the Kings a chance to win this game. Marvin Bagley did play. It was his 3rd game this season, his 2nd straight, and he played 11 minutes, scored just 2 points. 1 of 5 from the field, had 5 rebounds, which is nice because he only had 2 or 3 rebounds in the 17 minutes he played against Detroit, which makes no sense. Bagley did help, had 3 offensive rebounds, which is nice to see. He also had an assist. I mean, what can I say about Marvin Bagley's performance? It was just another meh performance. He looks like a guy who hasn't played very much and is trying to figure out his way. Defensively, once again, he wasn't awful. It wasn't good either. He just was meh. Like Marvin Bagley, that's just who Marvin Bagley is. I've told you before, whether Marvin Bagley plays or not, if something happens off the court involving Marvin Bagley dramatically, like I just don't care. Like that's to the point that I'm at, is anything that happens with Marvin Bagley, I do not care about. And I don't think Kings fans should really care about. Like that includes him being a failed number 2 overall pick. Like that ship has sailed. We all know it sucks. We all know it's doom and gloom. There's no need to harp on it anymore. The guy who drafted him is gone. So everything that has to do with Marvin Bagley, the pain, the happiness, the joy, anything, like it does not matter. Marvin Bagley, I've said it before and I'll say it again. He's a placeholder on this roster. He's on this roster. Just holding a roster spot, and that's really the extent of him being on this Kings team. I don't mind the Kings playing him if they think that he can help them out in certain areas. They've been struggling with rebounding, and he definitely can help them rebound the basketball better, gives them a little more size. So I don't mind him playing in limited stretches, I guess, but I have no expectations for him when he comes into those games. Although I am confused why Alex Len is not playing anymore. Like, did Alex Len do something? Did he say something? Was he mean to Luke Walton or something like that? Because Alex Len, I thought, has been very, very good for the Kings throughout this season. Now, we know that Len and Thompson have kind of been sharing time based off of matchups. And I understand Tristan Thompson playing against the Timberwolves because they have kind of smaller, thinner bigs and aren't necessarily a team with a juggernaut big like a Jonas Valanciunas or like a Steven Adams or teams like that where Alex Len is needed just for his size and physicality alone. But I still think Alex Len, regardless of whatever team you're playing and what kind of matchup it is, I think Alex Len provides good things for this Kings team, especially when it comes to rebounding. Now, I know Alex Len has also been in games where the Kings have struggled to rebound. So I'm not saying he solves everything himself, but I personally would like to see Alex Len playing more. And maybe we will see Alex Len playing more with this upcoming stretch of games. Here's the next few games for the Kings. You ready for this? The Kings play on Friday night at home against the Toronto Raptors. Winnable game. Another team that's in that kind of play-in tier, but they're, of course, in the Eastern Conference. Then you have the Utah Jazz at home again. You've played the Jazz twice, 2 of your best games so far this season. Like I said earlier, the game against the Jazz in Sacramento, the second game of the season, your home opener, was the best game I think the Kings have played. They still lost that game. That's an expected loss. Then you have the 76ers. You have the Blazers, who you've already beaten. You have the Lakers. You have the Wizards, the Lakers again, and then the Clippers back-to-back. Like that stretch is like, oh God, the Kings could go get 2 wins out of that stretch, and it wouldn't be surprising. But at the same time, too, for all of us who've watched Kings basketball for as long as we watch Kings basketball, you should probably have more confidence in the Kings in that stretch based off of how they play to the level of their competition. Like the Kings play 4 games against both LA teams. Is it weird to expect them to go 2-2 in those 4 games? Is that weird? Because I feel like it's not. Now, the Lakers haven't been that impressive. The Clippers are obviously dealing without Kawhi Leonard. But those are 2 of the better teams in the Western Conference, or at least in theory, teams that you get up to play against. Is it wrong for me to think that the Kings are going to go 2-2 during those 4 games? I have no explanation for it. It's just the Kings. Is it wrong for me to expect that out of the Jazz, the 76ers, and the Grizzlies, the Kings will at least get one of those games? And it might even be for some reason like the 76ers for no reason. Like, I have more confidence in the Sacramento Kings in stretches like this than I do during this 4-game road trip. And the start of this season versus this last 4 games that we've watched and the last 15 years of the same damn thing is all the evidence that I need to defend myself. So maybe you feel the same way. Maybe you don't. If you do, let me know. At Matt George Sack on Twitter. You can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, or leave your thoughts down in the comment section down below. All right, I'm going to get out of the way. After I tell you about a couple more ads and sponsors here of the Locked On Kings podcast, I'm going to get out of the way so you can hear Tristan Thompson's press conference in full. And then I was going to play Luke Walton audio for you, but I don't think it's necessary. Tristan Thompson says everything that needs to be said after this game. You're going to want to listen to every second of what Tristan Thompson has to say. Before that, though, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast brought to you by our friends over at Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why would you endure talking to a auto parts counterman who knows a lot more than you, uses terminology that you don't necessarily understand, and in the end, it's just a waste of time because their warehouse and their company only happens to carry a specific brand of part at a specific price point? You have no options. You have no flexibility, period, if they even carry the part to begin with. RockAuto.com has all the parts, the different brands, the different price points. You save money, you get exactly what you need, and it makes it easy for people like me who have no idea what they're doing when it comes to cars. You can save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why would you choose to spend $30, $50, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? I'll give you an example. A Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $353 from a chain store, $216 from Rock Auto. It's over $100 of savings just by going to rockauto.com. They have everything you need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Locked On Kings is also brought to you by betonline.ag. And hey, maybe you expected the Kings to play bad in all 4 of these games, even if they won one during this road trip, and maybe you made money off of it. If you did, I hope you did so at BetOnline. They're back and better than ever. A new web interface for the start of basketball season, more props, more odds, more lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number 1 spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to their new updated desktop or mobile website. Sign up today. Receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. All you have to do is use promo code Locked On to receive that bonus. It's free money right there. From basketball to football, baseball, NHL, boxing, UFC, soccer, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Hey, Tristan, just when you look at tonight's game overall, I guess what stands out, and also just, when you kind of look at some of the poor shooting nights you guys have had, how do you feel that that's had an impact on your defense as well?
I mean, in the NBA, you're going to have nights where you're going to make shots. You're going to have nights where you don't make shots. I mean, like we've been preaching since training camp, your offense can't determine your defense. We got to understand, if we're trying to get somewhere where this team haven't been in over a decade or damn near 2 decades, it's the little things that are going to put you in position to be there. Doesn't guarantee you it. Nothing's guaranteed in life, but it puts you in position. So defensively, the Timberwolves shot 50% from the field and then 27 from 3. So we know that they weren't making threes. So the guys, all of us out there, we got to get guys off the line. But at the same time, when a guy drives, it's the NBA, whether it's Anthony Edwards or D'Lo or Karl Anthony Towns, a low man's got to be there. You got to show presence and be there for your teammate to make to make those guys question or think twice, especially if they're not making no fucking threes. Force them to drive and kick it out. And we have a late contest from the 3-point line, especially if they're not making threes in this game. So those things keep compounding. Like we did a great job getting offensive rebounds, but we got to close it out by getting defensive rebounds. So it's just it's a compound thing. And what guys got to understand is that those little things over the course of 48 minutes, the my bads after the my bads after the my bads is what's going to cost you the game in the fourth quarter, and the reason why we got a loss.
Yeah, Tristan, I mean, you haven't been here for the years of losing. Just what are you seeing from the inside that's causing nights like this where you come out a little flat, you come out not just missing shots, but also the turnovers, a lot of them were soft turnovers. Like, how do you change that identity coming into a game?
I mean, this is the NBA. You're going to have nights where you're not going to make shots. It's every team. I've been my championship level teams, my middle of the playoff teams, the rebuild teams, the teams that are right in the hunt. I've been on all levels of those journeys in my career. But the one thing that's consistent throughout, you're going to have nights where you don't make shots. You're going to have many nights like that. You're going to have probably more nights like that than great nights where everything's going down. So those nights where you're not making shots, you have to pick it up on defensive end. You got to get stops. You got to close it out. Like, when the ball's in the air and two guys can grab the rebound, someone's got to grab it. I was taught at a young age, or since I've been in the NBA, the one area where you could be selfish and no one can get mad at you is rebounding. So, when I'm out there or Rich, I know one thing that we're going to go get that rebound. But, there's going to be times where we're not going to be able to, whether we're boxing out or we're out in perimeter boxing someone out. All five of us got to rebound. And the one thing that we got to emphasize is that long shots usually mean long rebound. I've been rebounding for my whole life, and I've made it an art. So guys got to understand that if a guy's going to shoot a three, more than likely, if it's a hard miss, it's going to go long around the free throw line area. And guys understand, well, we need all five to rebound. So things like that. Like you said, those turnovers, when teams throw zones out there, that's because they can't guard. And one thing Luke said, and we've been emphasizing that when teams go zone, just give it a second. When you get the ball, just take your time, survey, throw a pass, fake a shot, fake, and see how they react. Especially with this zone tonight, Timberwolves threw out there. The middle was wide open, and we got to capitalize on that. Don't let the zone discourage you. And teams are going to watch that. If I'm whoever we play tomorrow, if I'm that head coach, and my assistant has that scout, and they see that zone made us uncomfortable or made us turn the ball over, I'm going to throw a zone out there to see what we do and see if we learn from that. So for us going into next game, we got to understand that teams are going to throw that zone out there, and it's because they can't guard us, but also because they know that we've had a tendency to throw it away. So we got to fix that, clean that up. But all that stuff is like, you can fix that stuff. It's not a talent, or you don't have the right personnel. It's just a want, and make it a priority.
Hey, Tristan, as one of those vocal leaders on this team, when a team's going through a skid like the Kings have recently, do you fall under more of a short-term memory, kind of come out the next one and do what we do well? Or do you reflect hard on these couple losses and focus on what you guys need to do better from these previous games?
I think it's a balance. I think at the end of the day, the reality of it is this road trip should have been a 4-0, point blank period. I was going on this road trip planning on going 4-0. The teams that we played against, OKC, they don't want to win games. They want to rebuild. Everyone fucking knows that. The Spurs, they have all young guys. They're trying to figure it out. They have damn near 8 guys that all play the same position. They're trying to figure it out. Do they want to win games? Maybe, sure. But do they really want to be in the playoffs? Probably not. Probably want a top 10 pick. Timberwolves, they got names, but are they trying to win? Roll the dice, see what happens, figure out their roster. Detroit, they do not want to win. They want another top 3, top 5 pick. And that's no disrespect to the players on their team. They're going to play hard and give it everything they got. But at the end of the day, I know how this league works, and I know how the front office works. I can break down every front office, and I know their mentality will coming into every season, especially after 20 games. So those teams, 3 out of 4 teams really didn't want to win those games. They're probably pissed that we even won, that they won those games. You know what I'm saying? So tonight was another night. Like, these are the games you have to win. If you're trying to be in the playoffs or be in a playing game, these are the wins that you have to capitalize on. Because, when we get back home, you have Utah. That's contender or a contending team in the West. You got Toronto that's playing well. You got all these teams that are quote unquote playoff teams, and those will be tougher wins to get, and it'll be a tougher battle. So these teams, this 4-game road trip was supposed to be a 4-0 worst case scenario, 3-1, and maybe the one game you do drop would have been tonight. So it's definitely disappointing. I think, yes, you got to have short-term in terms of you can't keep harping on the past. I think the keys from this road trip is that you got to close out defensively. You got to string multiple stops, and you got to have each other's back. We got to be on a string and have a brotherhood. The offense is going to have the highs and lows. Who gives a shit? It's the NBA. But defensively, that's what matters. And I think that's what you have to learn on this road trip, that defense is what's going to keep you in the game and give you a chance to win. And that's all you want at the end of the day. So if you're taking steps defensively, like we did tonight, then you end up losing by 10 plus points to the Timberwolves. No disrespect to them, give them credit. They played well, but that's unacceptable.
Tristan, I did have another question, but I'm gonna ask this one. This will be my only question because your emotion is kind of bubbling up right now, and I just want to know.
You ask me anything, I'm good. I keep it cool. I'm just keeping it real. It's not emotional, just keep it real. If I'm on this mic, I'm gonna just shoot it to you straightforward, no sugarcoat.
No doubt, and I'm hearing that too. It appears that in these last 2 games, there's a sense of frustration coming from you, and are you just getting tired of seeing the same mistakes of how you guys are losing these games?
I think everyone's frustrated. I think for me, the player I am is energy, effort, hard work, punch the clock in. So of course I'm gonna be frustrated because I know what this team is capable of, and that's because I care. At the end of the day, I care. I want to win, and I care about my teammates, and I know what we can be. So the frustration is from a place of love and a place of tough love, but also because I know where we can be. If I thought this team wasn't shit or had no potential, then I probably wouldn't feel the way I feel. But I know what this team is capable of. I know these kids, everyone, I'm not gonna call guys kids because they're grown men, but I know each and every guy, their heart is in the right place and they want to win. Every guy in there wants to win. You know it. You see it in their eyes. I've been on teams that you see quitters, you see losers, just straight out losers. But this team has guys that want to win and want to do something special for the city. It's just we just got to come together and we just got to really learn from those mistakes and really make sure we make it a priority. And it's all of us. Me too. There was a time in the game where, maybe I should have pulled over or gave a hard foul. Like we're all at fault here, from the top to the bottom. We're all at fault. We're in this together. It's no man on an island, and we ride the wave together. But also, if we're gonna sit in the shit, we sit in the shit together, and we get out of there. We figure it out.
Tristan, always appreciate your insights on things, man. You have been around this league a long time and seen a lot. That you're in a position as a team where you've hit some adversity and there's been some chatter, about the coach and just the stability of the situation there. How do teams generally react in situations like that? And what are you seeing from this group in terms of a reaction and a response to those kinds of storylines?
Yeah, no, I mean, at the end of the day, there's going to be chatters. At the end of the day, the history and all the accolades with this team, it is what it is. And, I don't feed into that because, if you get absorbed and consumed in it, then you're never going to be able to prosper and do better for yourself or your teammates. So for us, you can't listen to that outside noise. At the end of the day, the guys that come to work with you, from trainers to coaches to PTs to equipment people to the chef, we're all in this together. We're all in this together. It's a family. And when you face adversity, it judges a man's character. But for our team, it's got to bring us to closer. And with this group, we're not splintering. We're not going our own way. We're going to stay together, especially with me here. We're going to stay together. I'm going to make sure of that because I take that with pride, especially being the guy that's been here a long time and have the resume and have the respect for my teammates. So I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we keep pushing, man. No one's going to feel sorry for you. This is the NBA. No one's going to feel sorry for you. C-Web and Bibby ain't coming through that door. So you got to keep pushing each and every day. Keep getting better in practice. Keep watching the film. Learn from the mistakes. If we all can just get 1% better each and every day, then we'll get our fair shares of wins. But in terms of outside noise, we don't pay attention to that. that's not us. It's your guys' job, which I respect. You guys are, that's your guys' career to do what you need to do. And for us, it's our career to, go out there and lace them up and go play some ball. So that's what we're going to focus on each and every day. And we got this long flight home, but get ready for this weekend. We're back home, get some home cooked meal. Our fans, we need them to be loud and ready for us and give us that life because, we're all in this together.
Just an incredible press conference by Tristan Thompson. Maybe my favorite press conference that I've been a part of over the last 8 seasons covering the Kings. Not because it was a joyous, happy occasion, not because he was fun and happy-go-lucky and made me feel good as a reporter. Like, no, he just shot from the hip. He spoke the truth. He spoke his mind, and that's what I like about Tristan Thompson. That kind of vocal leadership is what this Kings team needs more of, but I need to see it more in the game, not after a game. And the fact that it has to be Tristan Thompson to be that leader, a guy that sometimes plays, sometimes doesn't, who's only been on this team for a couple of months versus one of the other players on this who's been around, one of the leaders of this team, a guy like De'Aaron Fox, a guy like Harrison Barnes. We know that's not necessarily their personality, but damn, this team could use more of that, especially from their head honchos, even if their head honchos aren't playing as well as they possibly could. And, I didn't respond to Tristan's quote earlier in the show answering my question about the leadership, but he's 100% right. And this is why I've been hesitant about putting so much on Luke Walton and saying that Luke Walton needs to do a better job and it's on Luke to fire this team up. And it's Luke's fault when this team comes out slow and doesn't respond to pushes and runs by other teams. Yes, his adjustments when it comes to strategy and tactics and plays and things like that, rotations, those could always be better. But it comes to on-court execution, it should not take Luke Walton for these players who are professional athletes and grown men to fire themselves up and hold each other accountable. Tristan Thompson is 100% correct in everything that he said. I love this press conference. I hope you did too. I want to hear your responses to this because I know you have responses to what he had to say. Are you excited to hear that kind of stuff? Or maybe you're frustrated that it's Tristan that's saying it and not somebody else who's been around longer and is a little more important to this Kings team. Although I would argue, based off of what Tristan has said and who he is in this locker room, Tristan is very important to this Kings team going forward. Let me know what you think. At Matt George Sack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Leave your thoughts down in the comment section down below if you're watching on YouTube. That'll do it for another episode of Locked On Kings. I will be back tomorrow. I'm going to be joined by Sean Cunningham from ABC 10, my partner, my friend, had been here on Locked On Kings many, many times. He was the one who initially reported Marvin Bagley refusing to check into the game against the Phoenix Suns. Of course, we're going to discuss that, and Marvin, I guess, trying to carve out some sort of role or why the Kings are electing to play Marvin now of all times. We'll discuss that. We'll talk about this slide. We'll talk about Luke Walton being on the hot seat. I'm sure we'll talk about Tristan Thompson's comments as well. So I hope you join me for that. And then, of course, after the Raptors game on Friday, I will be hosting a podcast. After the Jazz game on Saturday, I'll be hosting a podcast. But so still a lot more great Locked On Kings content coming for the remainder of this week. So I hope you will join me for all of that. Until next time, my name is Matt George. Thank you so much for listening. Hey, keep the faith, keep your head up, and get a Theragun to work out all that stress from watching Kings basketball. We're all in this together. Kumbaya, everybody. I'll talk to you very soon. You have been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.